We have multiple huge Leafs updates to go over today as multiple reports have dropped from Elliot Friedman revealing some big information as it pertains to Toronto Maple Leafs and one specific very interesting name. But we also have a big report surrounding Sam Bennett and his future. So a ton to go over today, folks. Before we get into it, you guys have been fantastic. You guys have been beasts. About 71% of you who are watching right now aren't subscribed to the channel. So if you want to help us towards our big goal of 30,000 subscribers, make sure to hit that subscribe button. There's a lot to go over today. And obviously, the Leafs are in an interesting situation right now. There's a ton of rumors going around. Mitch Marner, we say this every day because there's a lot of question marks surrounding this team, and it's the calm before the storm here. But we're going to take a step back and dive into some interesting things that dropped today about a very interesting coach. And you can see this here on the 32 Thoughts podcast. Friedman says he believes that Joe Sacco was told he will not stay as the Bruins head coach. And with that, Friedman wonders if he will end up taking over Lane Lambert's spot in Toronto. Him and Craig Berube have some history back in 2000, 2001, and 2000. Very interesting here. And you can see the Bruins penalty kill under Sacco. Very good. This is a very interesting name. Before we dive into Sam Bennett stuff, I want to get your thoughts on this because, of course, Lane Lambert has been hired elsewhere. He's no longer the associate coach here for the Leafs. This would be a fantastic hire and a fantastic hockey mind to bring into the system.
Yeah, after Jim Montgomery got fired in Boston, I think this past November, obviously Joe Sacco took over as the interim head coach of the Boston Bruins. And since then, hasn't gone great for them. Obviously, in Boston, they missed the playoffs and they were horrible down the stretch. But I don't think he's a horrible coach. I don't know if he's a head coach, but I don't think he's a horrible coach or associate coach. And the one thing that I think is interesting here with Joe Sacco and what he can bring to the table is that Lane Lambert, when he was brought in last year, and of course, Lane Lambert is gone now. He's not part of the Leafs coaching staff anymore. He's the head coach of the Seattle Kraken heading into next season. But the one thing I thought was interesting, he was brought in to, of course, be the associate coach, but to work on the penalty kill specifically because he was a really good penalty kill coach. And obviously what he did on Long Island, they had some good numbers there. They weren't the best team, but had good numbers there. Now, when you look at Joe Sacco, same thing, top 10 in penalty kill in the league the last couple of years, right? So that's very interesting, bringing in a coach in that same role. I said a couple of videos ago, I don't know if MLSE wants to fill that role, right? But if they do, this would be a really good option for that, I think, at this point. And like you mentioned, they have some history. They quite literally played together, him and Craig Berube in 2000, 2001 with the Washington Capitals. They were teammates. So there is a little bit of history there. The numbers back up and support him in terms of the penalty kill. And obviously they brought in Lane Lambert for that reason. And I thought the Leafs penalty kill for last season was actually pretty good. Obviously you're going to have stretches that things are not good. That's just the course of the season. But I think it's interesting that they can kind of just bring in this guy if they wanted to for the exact same role, and he might play the exact same role. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do and if they even fill that role, but he has been connected and linked at this point.
Yeah, and a guy who, of course, has, I guess, a little bit of head coaching experience after Montgomery got fired. I like it. We know Lane Lambert, we discussed it in the video a week ago, whenever it was that he got hired elsewhere, that the PK was one of the things he took pride in, and the stats may not say the Leafs PK was the best. I think, I agree with you. I think it looked better than years past, and it really took a step forward there, and they all cared about it. And we saw Lane Lambert, and of course the joke with Marc Savard and Craig Berube in the playoffs with all the celebrations. It's going to be interesting to see if they do replace the associate coach position in general. There were some rumblings that they won't, but it seems like now, Cornelia Freeman, they're going to be looking to do that. So let us know down below what your thoughts are on that. But we have some new updates surrounding Sam Bennett. Now, this might be music to ears of people who don't want Sam Bennett, depending on how things go here. For Frank Saravalli, Sam Bennett's projected contract is tracking around 7 by 7.5, nowhere near the 10 million AAV that some have been throwing out. It was reported last week that Sam Bennett would only be opening the signing with Toronto or Florida. If Marner walks July 1st, is that number fair? So we also have a report from Friedman here, but this took a pretty big turn now with the way that things are looking. 7 by 7.5 is a lot more reasonable. It's a lot easier to stomach. And if you're making half of Mitch Marner, assuming he gets 14 or 13.5, this would be perfect for the Toronto Maple Leafs. But we'll dive into a report here in a minute. Things may have taken a turn in that regard, but I want to get your thoughts on this first. So that $10 million AAV that we've been hearing, luckily, isn't the case.
I'm going to say it every video. Let's keep in mind who the agent of this individual is, right? Let's keep that in mind with everything that's floating out there. I'm sure they're trying to play some mind games. Everything is a negotiation tactic at this point, especially for these two players, because they're the hottest names in the free agent class this year. They really are, right? Are they the two best players? I don't know. We could argue that, but I think they're the hottest players. That's for sure. The two players that teams want the most. So in terms of Sam Bennett, I think if you're getting him, I have to be honest, like, is $8 million an overpay? Maybe for what he brings to the table for the regular season. Maybe you can argue that. But if you're getting Sam Bennett for $8 or under $8 million, I think you sign that deal, especially if you're the Toronto Maple Leafs. He can help this team when it matters most. You have a lot of regular season performers, and Mitch Marner is exactly that, right? I don't think this team is going to have, again, it depends what they do this offseason, but I don't know if this team's going to have necessarily a hard time getting to the playoffs next year, right? But I think that what fans want to see is what you're doing in the playoffs and the players that you're going to bring in to help them through the playoffs. So this is a guy that could do that. I know a lot of people argue, I don't want the guy that hurt our goalie. I don't want the guy that hurt Matthew Nyes. Brad Marchand is a Florida Panther, right? This is the sport of hockey. Whatever helps. If you can get a guy who's going to come in, change the mindset, and help your team win, these GMs are going to make that move. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. Again, most, in my opinion, and by all reports in the last day or so, I think he's going to end up staying in Florida. I think a lot of this, bringing Toronto into it and the Maple Leafs, is a negotiation tactic. I do believe that. He is from here. I wonder if he is open to playing for the Leafs, but I do think that he ends up ultimately staying in Florida. But if you can get him for that number, I think you do it.
Yeah, that number is a lot easier to stomach. 10 million. I mean, maybe some team will do that if they desperately need playoff experience. You can see this here. Sam Bennett is only asking this much. I think it's a pretty reasonable ask. And the Maple Leafs should be all over this. We desperately need a second line center. Even if they get him at 7.8.5, maybe it turns into a bidding war here between the Panthers and the Leafs, and the Leafs decide to get him. We heard rumblings about a sign and trade between Marner and, of course, Sam Bennett. Elliot Friedman came out today and did say at the end of the day he thinks, and it says that Sam Bennett is likely to stay with the Panthers. So there is that report as well. Again, Friedman's been wrong in the past. Players have been wrong in the past. With Sam Bennett, it's an interesting situation because there's a lot of leverage work going on here, and I do think I'd say 70% chance he stays with the Florida Panthers, but I do think there is some odds here that the Leafs are going to try to sneak in. I thought less so at an 8.5, 9 to 10 million, but at 7.7.5, the Leafs are going to at least make a hard, push for him because he is pretty, he's a good player, and obviously I like him as a hockey player, not necessarily some of the antics he does off the, I guess on the ice, but away from actual hockey when you're hitting players and things like that, hitting anti-stallers. But you can't argue his talent, his playoff scoring ability, one of the best. And they still have a chance to win the Cup this year. He has 10 goals this postseason. Marner has 8 goals in the last 6 years since he signed his unprecedented contract. While that some people think that Bennett won't live up to. I mean, again, it's going to be interesting. But he's a playoff performer, and it seems like he's going to stay at Florida, especially if they win the Cup. But again, crazier things have happened, and the Leafs are definitely in the mix.
Crazier things definitely have happened. I didn't think John Tavares back then was going to be a Toronto Maple Leaf, right? So crazy things do happen. Again, I don't think it's likely that he's a Toronto Maple Leaf. I think he's going to try and stay in Florida, but again, anything can happen. Feelings can sour. We saw it with Steven Stamkos in Tampa Bay last year as well. So we'll see what ends up happening. If the Leafs have the opportunity to get this player for that cap hit, you absolutely have to do it. I think he can help the team. So it's going to be interesting. He's an underrated puck carrier, right? He can play center. I don't know if you'd want to play him at center, but he can. Little versatile, and he's not a bum. That's the other thing. This is not a guy who can help in the playoffs because he, hurts people. Like, there is that. I just don't know if he's going to get away with that playing for the Toronto Maple Leafs, but he's scoring goals, a lot of them in this year's playoffs. And he's an underrated puck carrier. He can actually play the game, right? He's a good player. He can get you 65 points maybe over the course of a regular season too. So that's not bad. And if he plays with some higher end players too, especially in the regular season, maybe he gets some more points. So if you can get him for that price, you do it. But at the end of the day, I do believe he's going to stay a Florida Panther.
Yeah, let us know what your thoughts are on this. Ladies and gentlemen, lots of news coming out. We're going to keep you up to date with all the latest. Make sure to subscribe button here. Thank you guys for watching. See you later.